Mr. President.
Senator from Kentucky.
Let's be very clear here today. Republicans have come to the floor to reopen government. We've offered request after request to reopen the government. We've offered to negotiate. From the other side, we hear, we will not negotiate, we will not compromise, and we will not reopen the government. We have offered 13 different compromises today to reopen the government. We are willing to open the government, then they say, oh, you must agree to everything or we will open nothing. We will not compromise, and we say to them, why don't we open the parts of government that we agreed to? Can we not end this farce of putting security guards in front of the World War II memorial? My goodness, it's an open park. They spent more money closing it than we spend keeping it open. We spend more money guarding the World War II monument than we do protecting our ambassador in Libya. It's become a farce. 85% of your government is open. We've offered today to open another 10%. Compromise means coming together and voting on some of the things you agree on. Every program that we've wanted to open today, the national parks, NIH, Veterans Affairs, allowing funerals, for goodness sakes, for our military heroes who have died in action. They say, oh, we agreed to it, but we won't agree to it. So let's be very clear. Republicans have offered today very specific proposals for opening government. The Democrats have uniformly rejected every appeal to open government. So when one of our wounded heroes can't have a funeral, when one of our people cannot be buried in Arlington Cemetery, when a World War II veteran goes to the monument and is barricaded and kept from viewing the monument to celebrate their service, be very clear that Republicans have asked to open the government and the Democrats have rejected opening at every point. In fact, they're very, very explicit with their strategy. We will not negotiate, they say. The president says he will not negotiate under pressure. My question is, when will he negotiate? We've had one good thing happen for the American taxpayer in the last 5 years. The bad thing is $7 trillion have been added to your tab, to your kids and your grandkids tab. One good thing happened, and it happened under duress, and it happened with regard to the debt ceiling. The sequester actually cut the rate of growth of spending. Didn't cut spending, but it's cutting the rate of growth of spending. The sequester happened under duress. The other side loves debt, loves spending, doesn't care how much your kids or grandkids will have. They don't care. They have rejected every compromise. What we are saying is $7 trillion of debt under President Obama is too much. The country is struggling. Economists say 1 million people are out of work because of the economy and because of the debt and because of the burden. And what do they want to do? Heap more debt on your kids and your grandkids. I say enough's enough. Let's reopen government. Republicans today have said, we will open government. Let's open the parts we can agree to. So I ask, Mr. President, unanimous consent that the Senate proceed to consideration of calendar number 207 for House Joint Resolution 70 to open the national parks, to make continuing appropriations for the year 2014, that the measure be read 3 times and passed, and the motion to reconsider be considered made and laid upon the table.
Is there objection?
Mr. President, reserving the right to object, it was my understanding that the senator from Kentucky was going to make a request relative to the Veterans Administration. The request relative to the national parks had been made earlier today. Is the request for the National Park Service?
Yes, and I can go on.
No,
I wanted it to be very clear that you are objecting to funding the national parks. So when people go to the national parks, they know they can call your office, okay? Because we want to open the national parks, and we want to make it very clear that your side is objecting to funding the national parks.
Reserving the right to object.
The senator from Illinois.
Reserving the right to object, I would like to clarify a few points relative to statements just made by the junior senator from Kentucky. The first statement, the Democrats will not negotiate. Well, let me remind the senator from Kentucky, and I'm sure he's not forgotten this, the spending level for the continuing resolution is the Republican spending level, which we agreed to in negotiation, $988 billion on an annual basis.
It's the law.
Do I have the floor, Mr. President?
The senator from Illinois has the floor.
It's the figure that the Republicans placed as part of the negotiations which the majority leader agreed to. That was a negotiation which led to that number which Speaker Boehner agreed to. Secondly, this argument by the senator from Kentucky that the Republicans are here today to open the government, let me at least remind the senator from Kentucky that it's their failure to pass the continuing resolution by the Republican majority in the House that has closed the government for 9 straight days. We passed the continuing resolution to keep the government open at Republican spending levels. The House has refused. This is a Republican shutdown. Point number 3.
Senator, yield for a question.
Well, let me finish my statement, please.
Okay.
I've reserved the right to object, and I have the floor.
No, he has the floor. You can speak until regular.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected. The senator from Kentucky has the floor, but I can stand and speak, reserving the right to object to his unanimous consent request. Is that correct?
That is at the sufferance of the senator who has the floor.
The right is at the sufferance of the senator who has the floor.
Suffer longer.
I thank the senator from Kentucky because I went through a period of suffering just moments ago. And the point I would like to make to the senator from Kentucky about the national parks is one that I hope he will understand. We want to open the entire government, including the national parks and other lands, recreation facilities that are owned by the federal government beyond the national parks. When it comes to the World War II memorial that the senator made reference to, I was just there. We had a group of honored veterans from World War II, came from Illinois last week, and I met them, and they had access to the World War II memorial. The reason there was any restriction was because the Republican shutdown took the employees away, which made it impossible for them to man their post. So here's my offer to the senator from Kentucky. It's not new, but it really tells the story. Do the Republicans really want to open the government? Here's your chance. I ask consent that your request be modified as follows: that an amendment which is at the desk be agreed to, that the joint resolution as amended be read a 3rd time and passed, motions to reconsider be considered, made, and laid upon the table with no intervening action or debate. This amendment is the text that has passed the Senate. It is a clean, continuing, no strings attached resolution for the entire government, including the national parks and many other important things. It's something that's already over in the House, could be called in a matter of minutes and passed by a bipartisan majority in the House.
Reserving the right to object, Mr. President. Reserving the right to object.
The senator from Kentucky.
I'm not opposed to a clean CR. If we want to have a clean CR at a level in which we can balance the budget, I'm for it. I'm all for it. If you'd accept a modification of a top-line number of $940 billion to replace $988 where appropriate throughout the continuing resolution, I can support your unanimous consent for a continuing resolution to go back over the House.
Does the senator object to my modification?
I'm offering a new modification to your modification and asking unanimous consent that you accept as a new top-line number where 988 appears and that 988 billion appears throughout the continuing resolution, that if your objective is to have a clean CR, let's have a clean CR. I'm happy to do it, but we need to do it and restrain the growth of spending in our government because your party's added so much that our country's drowning in a sea of debt. If you'll agree to a top-line number of 940 billion to replace 988 billion throughout the continuing resolution where appropriate, I would agree to your consent.
The senator from Illinois so modify his modification.
Reserving the right to object, holding the floor at the sufferance of the young junior senator from Kentucky. I'd like to ask him to respond to a question without yielding the floor.
Sure.
Would the senator tell us when was the last time that our federal government had a surplus in the budget, and who was the president at that time?
Could I ask for a germane question?
Well,
we might want to. Part of the question was it was divided government, and part of the answer. And the interesting thing about divided government is divided government can work better. and more conversation, I think we could get beyond this impasse. And I think if we would negotiate, and here is the problem. I know now there are some in your party saying you will negotiate, but the president said at least 20, maybe 30, maybe 40 times on national television, he will not negotiate till he gets his way. And that's still essentially what you guys are saying. You'll negotiate only after you get your way. Come and talk to us after we get our way. Problem is, we think that you won't negotiate unless there is a deadline. Because the thing is when you finally did negotiate, and here's my question for the senator from Illinois through the president is, did you vote for the sequester?
The senator from Kentucky.
The sequester wasn't a Republican bill. It's, it was voted on by many members of your party. The numbers are yours.
The senator from Kentucky's time has expired. Procedurally, I believe we have
I reserve the right to object to the modification to reduce the top-line budget number. This was a number negotiated between Speaker Boehner and the majority leader. Speaker Boehner said this was a number that he could pass. And I believe since we took a $70 billion cut in the budget resolution that is already passed in the Senate, I will not agree to further cuts in the program.
There is objection to the request?
I object.
Is there objection to the original request from the senator from Kentucky?
This is objection to the original to the modification of my motion. I object.